Today we're going to continue with our series that we started last week that we're calling How to Be a Watchman. How to Be a Watchman. I want to take you to the book of Daniel because I believe the book of Daniel presents us in a couple of passages here. It presents us with a perspective that I think is foundational to look at these things. In Daniel chapter 2, beginning in verse 17, we see a principle that we believe strongly. We feel really strong about this. So beginning in verse 17, chapter 2 of Daniel, it says, it's on your screens there. It says, "Then Daniel went to his house and informed his friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, about the matter." If you recall, we're in chapter 2 of Daniel. This is when Nebuchadnezzar has his first dream. He dreams of this statue with different gold and silver and different things like that. And he doesn't know what the interpretation is. He calls all of the magicians and all the people from Babylon, nobody, and he gives them a hard task. He says, "You got to tell me the dream and the interpretation." So they're like, "Gee, we were just going to Google this stuff and just tell this guy, whatever, but now we can't do that." So he was like, "Okay, then I'm going to kill y'all." He was from southern Babylon. "I'm just going to kill y'all." And so Daniel came and said, "Okay, hang on. I'm going, just, give me 24 hours. I'm going to go home. I'm going to pray with my buddies, and we're going to go to sleep, and the Lord is going to show us. The Lord's faithful. He's going to speak to us." And that's where we are picking it up here. So Daniel goes to his house. He tells his friends, and in verse 18 it says, "So that they might request compassion from the Lord of heaven concerning this mystery, so that Daniel and his friends would not be destroyed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon." Verse 19. "Then the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a night vision. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven, and Daniel said," so we're not going to be shown just yet what it was that the Lord revealed to him, the content of it, but we're going to see the praise and the worship because of the revelation. And in doing so, then we get a principle that we actually feel very strong about this. So verse 20, it says, "Daniel said, 'Let the name of God be blessed forever and ever, for wisdom and power belong to him.'" Verse 21, "It is he who changes the times and the epochs. He removes kings and establishes kings." That's the work of God. He removes kings and establishes kings. And he does it in completely different ways every time. So we come to a time like right now, like today, and we are in the middle of God removing and establishing. So we don't know who is coming in, who is going out. We don't know. We're kind of in this. I don't know if you've ever gone through these in the water parks. You get into these very high slides that are all covered. That's like I'm not super claustrophobic, but just a little bit to not enjoy that ride. To like, okay, when is this thing going to end? When am I going to just splash, see the light at the end of the tunnel and just splash and be done with it? Maybe I did it because, my kids wanted to do it or something. The ride, it sometimes can take forever and not be fun at all. All these curves come and you don't know and you have no idea where it's coming and where it's going, and it's just not a pleasant ride. It feels like that right now. So we're in the middle of this process of God removing and establishing. We're in this process. Because of that, we have not only a right, but a responsibility to speak to this issue. We cannot ignore the work that God is doing in the most important nation on earth, the most powerful nation on earth. We cannot ignore it because it's so particular. It is just so interesting, so intriguing what he's doing. And I believe that he wants to show his people. He wants to show his people, just like he did with Daniel. He wants to reveal. He wants to show. So, not only is it our responsibility, but it is our privilege. It is our task as watchmen to look out and to ask, what are you doing? What is the nature of this particular process that we're going through? And what is the purpose? What is it that you are trying to achieve through this? You know, it's our responsibility to know what our God is up to in this world. If we don't, how are we going to follow him? How are we going to know to take a stand with him? So I'll show you another scripture, and then we'll move on with the actual asking him, what are you doing? So Daniel 4, also in verse 17, I'm sure you're also familiar with this. It says, this sentence is by the decree of the angelic watchers, and the decision is a command of the holy ones, in order that the living may know that the Most High is ruler over the realm of mankind, and bestows it on whom he wishes, meaning the rule, he bestows it on whom he wishes, and sets over it the lowliest of men. So the context here is Nebuchadnezzar's second dream, in which he saw a tree that was cut and there was a stump left, and he had no idea what it meant, and the Lord revealed it to Daniel, and Daniel told him, you know what, I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but that tree is you. You're going to be cut off from people. And honestly, he went mad. The king, he just went crazy. I think it was for 7 years. He was like an animal. And then the Lord restored him. And we don't know if he came to worship only the God of Israel, but he certainly gives worship to the God of Israel. Hopefully, he came to a faith that brought salvation to him, instead of just adding one more God to his pantheon there. But the truth here, again, is that God has dominion, that he is the ruler over all of the affairs of the realm of mankind. And he delegates this rule to whom he wishes. And so, again, we are in this process. He's decided to give us the replay and the slow-mo of the entire play. And we see step by step by step, and we're like, okay, hurry up, and I want to see the whole picture. But he has a purpose into all of this. So let's then ask ourselves what this purpose is, what the nature of this time is, and what is it that he is trying to accomplish. So, we have to recognize during this time, we have to recognize at least three things. We have to recognize that this abnormal period of indecision regarding who is going to be our next president, we have to recognize that this period is from the Lord. That this is from God. Yes, there are human players, but this time is from Him. He is the one that has thrown the whole thing into a different shift. This is the work of God. We have to acknowledge that first and foremost. Second, we have to recognize that He has a reason and a purpose. That there is a cause and an effect. Something set this in motion, and this is going somewhere. There is a purpose here. And that sometimes, and that something prompted this, and something is trying, and He is trying to accomplish something. There is a cause, there is an effect. And then thirdly, we have to recognize that it is appropriate for His children, for His servants, to seek and even to expect to receive revelation from Him as to the nature and the purpose of this time. We have to come to that place in which we recognize that it is appropriate for us to seek understanding, to receive revelation. Do you know what an agnostic is? Agnostic? That's a compound word. The word gnostic is Greek for knowledge. But when you put the prefix agnostic, it negates. And so that is a theological posture that means that something cannot be known. And so people say, well, I am an agnostic because I don't believe you can know. I don't think you can know God. You cannot know whether there is a God or not. And many times we as believers, we dwell in that philosophy. Well, there's no way you can know. So we live as if this whole thing is not from God, as if we don't have a responsibility during this time, and as if we don't need to know, don't have to know, that we can get by without knowing. We cannot be in a place like that. We have a responsibility to seek, to understand, and to seek revelation. Even if we are clumsy at it. You know, the gift of the prophetic is just like any other gift. I can tell you, I remember very clearly the very first time as a new believer, fairly new, that I was given the opportunity to teach for the first time. It was in my youth group. I had no idea what I did. I have no idea what I taught, but I can tell you how I felt. I felt completely inadequate. I knew that I needed to learn. I knew that I needed to grow. But I also knew this is a spiritual gift. I love doing this. I love opening the Word and sharing it with people. So I knew I needed to grow in this spiritual gift. Well, guess what? The prophetic gift is the same. It's the same. We can hear someone exercising the prophetic gift and say, gee, that was not good. That doesn't mean we throw away the whole thing. That's why we create here at Sukkot a culture, in the prophetic, we create a culture of trial and error, so to speak, a culture of grace, a culture of growth when it comes to the prophetic. Because we have the same philosophy when it comes to the gift of teaching. You know, different ones get different opportunities to teach here and there, and some of us are ahead, and some of us are still getting to that level of proficiency in our teaching. Well, guess what? The prophetic is the same. So we have a responsibility to seek understanding, to seek revelation, even if it is clumsy, even if it isn't as good as someone else's. You will grow if you continue persevering in it. And we have to. We have a responsibility. We have a responsibility, first and foremost, because we need to align ourselves with God. We need to speak to others. We need to have reasons and be able to articulate why. We need to align ourselves with Him, and we need to communicate to people from Him. So we have to know, because we shepherd people. Maybe you don't think that you shepherd people, but you shepherd your children, even your adult children. You shepherd them. People at work, people that you work with, they want to hear a word from you. Even on Facebook, of all places, we shepherd people. We influence people. We have to know. We have a responsibility to know. So, part of the problem is that we have somehow come to believe that revival and spirituality have nothing to do with politics. We've learned that in our culture, in the Western, modern part of the body of Messiah. We have come to learn, we have come to believe this, that revival and spirituality have nothing to do with politics. Here's the problem, though, that the fight has been brought to us. We were trying to stay in a corner and say nothing until Yeshua comes, and then we're out of here. The problem is that they have brought the fight to us, and now we are in it. Here's how. The political climate is all about the very things that are at the heart of our faith. The sanctity of life. You cannot turn away and have no opinion about the death and the murder of children in the womb. You can't. You will have an opinion, even if you think it is an agnostic opinion. We cannot know whether that is a human being or not. You are somewhere in that scale of opinion. You may think you're right in the middle and that's okay for you to be there, but guess what? It may not. It may not. The sanctity of Israel. That's another issue. We were not looking for that fight, but it is brought to us. When we have members of our Congress expressing 100% anti-Semitic views, we were not looking for that fight. But it's right in our face. What are we going to do? This is the sanctity of the people of Israel, the sanctity of the land of Israel. We can't stay out of it. Our revival and our spirituality is going to clash with politics. Even if you're just in a corner trying not to interact with anybody and anything. The sanctity of marriage. You were not looking for that one, but it comes to you. It comes to my children in high school. It's all over. You cannot avoid it. You have to take a stand, one way or the other. You need to know. You need to be equipped. We have to know. For us to experience revival, it means that we have to come out of that corner on the offensive. We have to get on the offensive. That's what revival will do to you. It will put you on the offensive. You cannot have this light shine here with other believers, and then when you take it out into the world, you're just going to put it in your back pocket and not going to say anything. It will not work that way. So our revival is going to put us in the offensive in areas that are political. We didn't choose for those areas to be political, but they are. And we need to know, we need to be equipped. Through this time, through this twilight zone that we're going through for almost a week now, through this time, God is shaping us. He is shaping us. He is forming us. He is changing, directing us. He is sharpening our focus. He is sharpening us. He is equipping us. He is the ultimate multitasker. With one move, he accomplishes so many things. This time is of God. And he is shaping us through this time. This uncertainty is causing us to look for answers. Maybe some of us look for answers inside of us, in our intellect, in our political views, or lack of them. But we are looking for answers. We need answers. So what that means is that whether we are aware of it or not, we're actually open to change. That's a good thing. We're looking for something different, for answers to this. That means, even if we're not aware of it, we are open to change. That is a good thing. That is the posture that God wanted to create in us. So let me talk to you about how God is using this time of change, this time of uncertainty. You see, this uncertainty is giving us a window. It's giving us a window to imagine, to have a foretaste, for a moment at least, for a few days, for a few weeks. It's giving us a window to imagine what it would be like living under leaders with an evil agenda. When you think that this can go a certain way and it could mean something that we didn't want, you are taken through an experience. It may or may not materialize, but for now, you're getting a foretaste of what it would be being led by people who have an evil agenda. And you have to have answers for that. How are you going to live that way? What if? What if? What are you going to do? So it gives us a window that forces us to look for answers, to be open to what if, to some change. But let me tell you, even if the what if comes to pass, even if the worst that we could imagine comes to pass, we have actually made some progress here, to the point that even those who have this evil agenda are recognizing that that's not what people want. Remember, this is politics. So they want to accommodate at least what they say. They want to accommodate it because it may be too far out. It may be just a little too radical. For instance, I heard people talking about how the message of defund the police, that didn't settle well with people. So we have to stop saying that. It's like, really? Shouldn't you stop believing that? Well, it's politics, right? So at least they're saying, we got to stop saying that. Now, these people they're not yet in power, but they're realizing things have changed. We just discovered things were not as open and wide open for us to come in and preach this message, and people were going to buy into it, by the droves. So even if we imagine the worst that could happen, we've actually made some progress, that it wouldn't be as bad as they would want it to be. That's progress. I hope I'm making myself clear, and I hope you can understand this, that we've made some progress because they've realized through this election that we're not receiving, as a people, as a country, we're not receiving everything they are trying to sell us. This time of uncertainty also gives us a window to imagine what it will be like to lose an influential leader that champions our cause. You're having to imagine what it would be like to not have the leader that we have, to not have a voice at the very top of our national leadership that says that the life of the unborn is holy. We're having to imagine what it will be like to lose that voice. The voice that says Israel is God's people, and the land of Israel belongs to the people of Israel. We are having to imagine, thank you. We are having to imagine what it will be like to lose that voice. It is not a small thing. It is not. But this is also a window then to help us realize that we've had a good thing. We really have. But we so focus on the bad side of it, haven't we? And guess what? It is true. There is a bad side to it. But you have to be careful. You have to be careful. There's so much baby with that water. So much baby with that water. Got to be careful what you're throwing away. We may lose an influential voice that champions our cause, that speaks about marriage in a biblical way. Wow. Are we really ready to toss that like it's nothing? We're having to imagine that perhaps we already did. And that voice won't be there. We're having to imagine that. You see, this is that twilight zone that God has created for a short while, perhaps to just help us understand what the alternative would be and could be. This uncertain times also give us a window. It gives us a window to test prophecies. I'm sure most of you have heard at some point or another that there are prophetic words that speak of a certain outcome that right now looks like it may not happen. There is a possibility that it may not happen according to the prophetic messages that have been given by people who are reputable and who have a track record. So this is a window in which the prophetic words, the prophetic itself, is being tested. Let me show you a couple of verses about this. Psalm 105. We have one of these psalms that gives us like a summary of the whole Hebrew Bible, and Psalm 105 does that a little bit. And there's a verse that it comes and speaks of, it talks about Joseph, talks about Joseph's experience. Is it verse 39, 18, 19, that's what it is. So in Psalm 105, 19, then we read that it says, until the time that his word came to pass, the word of the Lord tested him. The him here is Joseph. Now we know the dreams, right? Joseph's dreams and all of that. So until the time that his word, that his dreams, the things he spoke, until the time that they came to pass, that word that he had spoken, that the Lord had given him, and that he had spoken to others, that word tested Joseph. We know about Joseph's tests. You can imagine him in jail thinking is this word actually ever going to come to pass? The word of the Lord tested him. Reminds me of Yochanan, John the Baptist, in prison. Wow, so much that he had taken in that he actually says, wow, I'm not sure if he is the one. Can you guys help me out and go and find out if, he really is the one? That's how tough it got for him. Same for Joseph. But you know what? It is the same with us today. The words that have been spoken, the Lord has slowed everything down here so that the word that has been spoken is testing us. Are we going to be found faithful? You see, the way to test a prophet, there are two ways to test a prophet. One is in Deuteronomy 18, and he talks about, whether the thing that he predicts comes to pass or not. But there's another test in Deuteronomy 13. When I read that beginning in verse 1, it says, if a prophet or a dreamer of dreams arises among you and gives you a sign or a wonder, and the sign or the wonder comes true. So this isn't the case that, he gave a prophetic word, but it didn't come to pass. So obviously, he needs to be stoned to death, right? No, that's not the case here. Because what he said actually came to pass. And it says, concerning which he spoke to you, saying, let us go after other gods. Oh. So it's like, I'm going to give you a sign that confirms that we're supposed to go and worship other gods. And the sign comes to pass. Pretty tricky here. So I've actually listened to a few of these prophets this week, now that their word is up in the air, right? And I've heard consistently, number one, that they are filled with the Lord, filled with faith, and that they are leading people to the Lord. They're leading people to the Lord. I came to know the Lord in '84. So I remember a little bit of the mess of the televangelists in the late '80s and in the early '90s. It was a mess. Some of these guys are still on TV, and I'm like, I can't even watch you. I remember you from 1985. But those who are in prophetic ministries today, they're different. There's a difference that's very obvious. They're not about money. They don't have these hidden lives like those people in the '80s did, cheating on their wives and cheating on their husbands and all kinds of crazy stuff. Their hair's okay, I'm not going to talk about the hair. But there's a different spirit to these guys today and these women today. That's encouraging because we are being tested. We are being tested. Here's the thing. When we receive a prophetic word, we're not supposed to just sit there, do nothing, and, I'm just going to see if it comes to pass. Even for the ones who hear, for the ones who receive a word, there's an active component here. Let me show you. 1 Timothy 1:18. I'm going to conclude with this. 1 Timothy 1:18, it says, "This command I entrust to you, Timothy, my son, in accordance with the prophecies previously made concerning you, that by them you fight the good fight." By the prophetic words. In other words, the prophetic words are your weapons with which you are going to fight the good fight. We talk a lot about Timothy and fighting the good fight and all of that, but I don't think we're ready to receive the context here. The context is prophetic ministry, prophetic words. So the prophetic words that have been spoken over our nation and over our leaders are for us to contend with, to use them for us to pray and remind the Lord, you said. And fight the good fight. So, as a watchman, I'm looking on the other side of this time. After all is resolved. And I see three things that are going to be strengthened as a result of this time, of these things that we're having to imagine today. Imagining living under a dark agenda. Imagining not having the voice that supports our cause. Imagining whether the prophetic is going to be validated or not. So I see three things that are going to be strengthened as a result at the end of this time. And so because I have three things, I'm going to go on for another hour. No, just kidding. Just kidding. Number one is the prophetic. The prophetic is going to be strengthened when the Lord turns around and shows us what he meant and how he's going to bring about the things that he said. The prophetic is going to be strengthened. I was speaking with Cynthia, who is the one who leads our prophetic ministry, but who is very much pregnant these days and very much having to stay home and fight that fight. I was talking to her on the phone this morning, and she said, I feel this is preparing the world for the two prophets, the two witnesses in the book of Revelation that are going to have such a strong prophetic ministry. And the believers, we need to know, we need to get behind them, and we need to support, and we need to receive their ministry. So this is a preparation. This is the good thing. The prophetic ministry is going to be strengthened because we're going to see that there are people who speak from the Lord. And that even though it may look weird on the trip there, we do get there as the Lord showed them. So the prophetic is going to be strengthened. Second thing that I see strengthening is our own political involvement. It has to. We can continue playing defense when it comes to the sanctity of life. We have the more revival, the more that we are going to speak to these issues that even though we didn't decide for them to be political, they are political. So our political involvement is going to be strengthened as a result of this time. And then it also will help strengthen our resolve to support life, to support light, to support truth. Our resolve to support these things is going to be strengthened. So I see these things coming as a result of this weird time, this time of God is going to do this and many, many more things. And I want to finish with this. I think at the end of this time, because of all of these things that we are going to learn, that we are already learning, all of these scenarios that we don't want to get into, because of these things, at the end of our time, at the end of this time, we're going to be more thankful for the leader that God gave us. We are going to be more thankful for the kind of stand for life, for Israel, and for family and marriage. We're going to be more thankful for that voice that speaks without fear to these things that are so important to us.